Here's to strong women. May we know them, may we be them, and may we raise them. Hello and welcome to another powerful episode of Retinal Realities, the podcast where we challenge perceptions, celebrate resilience, and amplify voices from the visually impaired community and beyond. I'm your host, Sonia Mahabir, and today's episode is a tribute to the spirit, strength, and stories of women. Because, as we all know, August is Women's Month in South Africa. It's a time to honor the impact of women in every sphere. I'd like to read a quote by Nelson Mandela. Sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. So, being a woman, and even more so for women living with disabilities, the world of sports is not always a level playing field. And yet, against all odds, they run, they swim, they ride, they lift, and they conquer. In this episode, we spotlight one such phenomenal woman, Kathleen Flanagan, a 39-year-old who lives with retinitis pigmentosa since the age of 5. Kathleen has played various sports: squash, tennis, swimming, diving, kickboxing, and modern dancing. In road running, she has completed various marathons and participated in 4 nationally and internationally recognized para-triathlon events, achieving gold. Amazingly, she has also completed her first full Ironman in March this year and intends on completing another next year. So, Kathleen, welcome to our podcast. Thank you for making the time and sharing your journey.
Hi, Sonia. Thank you so much for having me. I feel very honored and privileged to have been invited, and I hope to provide some encouragement to your listeners.
Thank you very much. So we're going to dive in with some questions and go about your journey and just share your story. So I think let's start off a little with some context for our listeners. Can you take us back to the beginning? What first drew you to sports, and when did you realize this is going to be your lifelong passion?
Sure. What drew me to sports? Well, I must admit, as a kid, I was pretty active, always running around, climbing trees, climbing onto the roof, playing cricket with my brother, playing tennis with the neighbours, and I was very active in sports at school. What drew me to sports? Well, I think at primary school, it was fairly compulsory. And I must admit, I preferred to be the social sportsman. I wasn't a very competitive sportsman. I played a lot of ball sports. I wasn't really into the athletic side of things, but I found a love for modern dancing. And that, I think, is what drew me into the sporting line. And that was really my passion, just to move in a fluid motion. In high school, again, it was compulsory to do sports, and I took up ball sports again. And later on in life, after school, I found a love for road running. I didn't take it very seriously. I just thoroughly enjoyed being outdoors and jogging. When I took up accounting, went to university and studied accounting, I just found the work and the workload extremely difficult. And the harder the work was and the more stressful it was, I think the harder I pushed in my road running. So much so that when I failed my honors year in accounting, not very proud to have to say it, but there it is. I entered my first full marathon and completed that in 2016.
Okay, that's interesting. So I guess it all first started with you being social and playing friendly matches. And then being visually impaired, are you able to just describe perhaps the moment you discovered you had retinitis pigmentosa and how it impacted your identity, especially being a young female? You were 5 years old.
So I must admit, I don't remember discovering or realizing that I had retinitis pigmentosa. I just know the story from when my parents realized there was a problem. I was 5 years old, and my mom had tucked me into bed, and she went off to put my brother into bed, and I came looking for her. And she was in the bedroom chatting to my brother, and the light was off. Only the passage light was on. And I walked into the room, apparently with my arms and hands outstretched, calling out, "Where are you, Mum? I can't see you." And she was like, "I'm right here, honey." And again, I just said, "I can't see you." And that is apparently when they realized there was an issue. And I was sent off to, I think it was to Cape Town for some eye testing. And I saw a lot of doctors. And eventually they diagnosed me with retinitis pigmentosa. And I suppose it affected me throughout my life, being that I could never see at night. And as a kid, when you have friends over and they sleep over, or you have a braai in the evening and your friends come over and they want to play something outside in the dark, I could never partake in that. And I think that is when I realized I was perhaps slightly different. How has it intersected with my identity as an athlete or a kid? I don't feel like it really affected me. As a kid, I was too oblivious to the fact. I definitely had reduced peripheral vision, but I went to mainstream school and I studied and I read books. I was active, I was social. It was only really when I look back at my sporting activities and I see that I perhaps didn't perform as well as I could have in my ball sports because of the lack of peripheral vision. Yeah, perhaps that took away a little bit of my confidence. Also on stage, when I did a few modern dancing shows, I didn't have the confidence to move comfortably on stage because of dim lighting or low lighting. So, yes, I think that was it.
Yeah. And then looking at your achievements, you completed a full Ironman, and that's nothing short of phenomenal, right? So, what motivated you to take on such an extreme challenge? Because it's not just an ordinary sporting event, it is an extreme one. And what motivated you to do that? And also, perhaps tell us, what did it teach you about your own resilience?
Well, many moons ago, when Ironman first started here in Port Elizabeth, I was one of the supporters on the sidelines watching the men and women running, swimming, cycling, and looking very tired and facing extreme weather conditions. And yet I still said to myself, one day that's going to be me, or I want to do that one day. But honestly, I never did anything about it for years. And only when things got tough at work and when I struggled in my studies did I start taking my sport seriously. And that included triathlon. And I had the opportunity to take part in a half Ironman, which is obviously half the distance of a full. And that to me seemed doable. And I managed to complete my half Ironman on my own. And the day I completed that half Ironman, it was just a phenomenal day. It was amazing. I loved every minute of being out there on the bike, in the sea, on the run. I felt amazing. I felt important. I felt like I had achieved something incredible and I knew I wanted more. It left me hungry for more. Unfortunately, about a year later, things went pear-shaped with my eyes, and I had to put that dream or thought of completing an Ironman on the back burner. And then I found myself in a situation where I was now no longer able to make the decision of competing in an Ironman on my own. I was going to need a guide to help me. So it was not only getting myself fit and ready and convinced that I can do this thing, but to convince a guide or some person out there to step up and commit to the training. That was difficult because people have their own ambitions. And it took me a long time until I eventually found somebody who put up their hands and stepped up and said, "I will do this thing with you." And yes, I almost think to myself, if I hadn't lost my vision, perhaps I never would have done an Ironman. I think the thought of not being able to do an Ironman on my own drove me even harder towards wanting to complete one.
That's truly remarkable. And I'm sure your courage and your inner strength had to be so contagious that you had to also inspire your guide to take you through the journey. Your gold medal, what does that mean to you? And what does it symbolize beyond the podium?
When I competed in the para triathlon, it is a much shorter distance than an Ironman. I just want to clarify that. It's very much a sprint distance event. And a gold medal, sure, it was almost unthinkable that I could win a gold medal in any sports. I had never really considered myself much of a competitive sports person. And there I was competing and actually winning gold. What does it symbolize to me? I feel it symbolizes strength, yes, resilience, absolute grit, determination to do this thing, regardless of whether I can see or not, regardless of whether I'm going to trip and fall, or feel like I'm drowning in the water or come off the bike in a bad way, it feels like it's a symbol of pushing past my own limitations, whether they are visual or mental, physical or emotional. Yeah, I think that beyond the podium is the gist of it.
That is a massive milestone.
Thank you.
And so, August being Women's Month, which is a time to honor courage, strength, and leadership, what message do you have for women who feel overlooked, especially in competitive arenas or male dominated spaces?
So, in this sense, I do believe that men have a fair amount of advantage over women when it comes to strength due to the testosterone levels, but testosterone level isn't everything. Mental strength and resilience and a certain level of pain threshold that women can handle, I think, is definitely a strength of women over and above men if we had to compare the two. And I don't think women should feel outdone by men at all. I feel that even though it's a male dominated space, we as women have a place. Yes, I want to add to my response that I feel that women are in some ways just as strong as men, if not stronger. We have mental strength, mental capacity. We are resilient in a lot of ways. And sometimes being the underdog is actually to your advantage. You have the upper hand. People might underestimate you and yeah, they overlook you, but you can come up from behind and actually prove your value, prove your worth, and perhaps even step across the finish line before they do. Yes, there was something I wanted to mention as well. Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, right? They are these two famous actor and actresses from years ago who used to take part in musical shows. And they always used to say how Fred Astaire was just amazing on his feet, light as a feather, dancing around, so savvy. And yet, Ginger Rogers would say, well, she at least did it in high heels and she did it with grace and beauty. And I think that's just something we should take away. We shouldn't be comparing ourselves to men at the end of the day anyway. We are in our own league. And we should just look at ourselves, tell ourselves we're beautiful and that we are worthy of a place next to any man out there on the finish line.
I do agree with that. And I also think the point about willpower, it is true that willpower does rewrite fate. And with that inner yearningness to do what you have to do, somehow the success that comes with it, you cannot describe it. So I can understand that to some degree. And
Mm-hmm.
perhaps tell us a bit, as a woman with a disability, it adds to the difficulty and the challenges that you have to endure. Have you ever felt doubly challenged or underestimated with being female as well as having a disability? And how have you responded in those situations?
Well, I'd like to say that it hasn't happened very often. I do recall being on the tandem at my first half Ironman event, and my training partner and myself were climbing this hill. And being two people on the bike, it's not easy. We're twice as heavy. We might have twice the leg strength, but we're twice as heavy. And some of the guys and girls can stand up and cycle while standing. But on a tandem, it's a hell of a lot more difficult. And my training partner and I had not quite mastered it. So we sit and we're right at the back and we're climbing slowly up the hill, and everyone is climbing quicker and faster past us, passing us on the way. And we got to the top of the hill and started heading down the hill. And now it is to our advantage. We're coming downhill. We're twice as heavy and we come down at twice the speed. And I still remember this gentleman that we cycled past calling out, "Hey, that's not fair. There are two on the bike." Or some of the guys will shout, "Hey, she's not pedaling," or, they're cracking jokes like that. I certainly don't feel like it's a major challenge. I don't feel like I have anything to prove. I'm there. I rocked up. I was there on the start line. I'm going to be there on the finish line. I don't think I need to spend any energy trying to prove myself at the end of the day. Yes, it's challenging to be out there and to be female, but with my disability, I'm just doing the best I can at the end of the day. I just want to rock up and do what I do best and do it with grace and finesse and with beauty if I can. I am female. I certainly try and look my best when I can, but it's about doing what makes me happy and being fulfilled with what you do and doing it in the right spirit and with the right attitude.
I sure think that is all the feminine strength and courage that we as females hold within us. And so, Because of the various sports that you've been involved in, what practical steps do you think sport institutions or communities out there can take to ensure better inclusion for people living with disabilities, especially women?
All right. The way I see it, I do think that sporting institutions and communities could be a little bit more inclusive when it comes to road running and league races. I find that we have a lot of categories that one can compete in, but there isn't a recognized disability category. I think that is perhaps something that is lacking and should be looked into. I sometimes feel that we are having to do twice the amount of work, twice the amount of concentration. In order to get to the start line, we need to make sure that we are prepared as well as our guide. And because you're two people, you never know who is going to be sick on the day or who is going to have a bad race day. Yes, I feel that we are worthy of some recognition, and I think it is something to be looked into. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think the topic of transformation and inclusivity is always a very important topic in all spheres that we deal with, especially within Retina South Africa and talking about disability and gender. And in South Africa, especially, we have a lot of work to be done. So I think it's a very important topic to always keep in mind and to always share thoughts around. And tell us, Kathleen, what do you say to young girls listening on our podcast today who might have just received a diagnosis or who feel that their dreams are slipping out of reach? What motivational message can you share?
Well, firstly, I'd want to go up to them and give them a big hug and say, I've been there. I know what it's like. I know what it feels like when it feels like your world is caving in. But be reassured, there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are people out there who are willing to help, who will drop everything to help you. And one shouldn't feel guilty about taking those people up on that help. If you are passionate about doing something and you want to achieve it, put your mind to it, be determined. With great determination comes great reward and great achievement. If you put your mind to something and you set your goals, you can achieve them. But so much more can be achieved when you accept the help of somebody.
I think that is true. And we always talk about compassion, but sometimes we forget to actually have that same amount of compassion and kindness to ourselves. So I think that's also something we need to constantly remind ourselves. And Kathleen, you have goals all the time and you're always setting yourself with future goals and vision. What's next and what exciting and upcoming events that you'd like to share with us?
Yes, I have got quite a few things on my list of things to do, sporting events mainly, but there are a few others, non-sporting related. I have the full Ironman coming up in 2026, and I have managed to find myself a new guide who is willing to assist me and take me through training and through to the finish line on race day, and I'm super excited about that. I have the double century coming up in November. It is a cycling race where we are 12 athletes in a team and we have to cycle 200 kilometers in the Western Cape region. And it includes, I think, about an 11-kilometer climb. And I'm very excited about that. It's a lot of work ahead. I still have to put in a lot of hours on the bike, especially on the seat of that bike, which can be quite uncomfortable. But I'm very excited to be possibly part of a full para team. All the team members will be para athletes. And then, even more excitingly, I was able to get an entry into the London Marathon, which takes place in April next year. I have organized myself a guide in the UK, and now I just need to work at doing a bit of fundraising to get myself there and back again. Yes, if there's anything besides sport that I'm wanting to set my goals at, I want to get back onto the ballroom floor and start dancing again. I used to teach ballroom, and I would really like to continue with that at some point in the future.
Wow, that sure is a very exciting lineup. And we wish you all the very best with your events ahead, your fundraising, your training, all of it. Thank you,
Mhm.
Kathleen, for your time and sharing your story. And from Retina South Africa, all the very best with your upcoming events.
Thank you so much, Sonia. I really appreciate your time today. I hope I have in some way encouraged some of the athletes and perhaps non-athletes out there to get out and find their own finish line and just pursue that dream with great determination and a good attitude.
Thank you, and I'm sure you have. and a happy Women's Month from Retina South Africa. In closing, to our listeners, please do remember to subscribe to our channel and follow us on social media. All our details can be found on our website, retinasa.org.za. Thank you.